What if Ukraine keeps the nuclear weapons? A little backstory first. In 1994, Ukraine inherited 1,900 nuclear weapons from the Soviet Union. At the time, Ukraine was still a poor country and desperately needed financial aid. So they struck a deal with Russia and Belarus. They would give up their nukes in exchange for billions of dollars worth of aid. And just like that, Ukraine became the largest country in Europe without any nuclear weapons. But what if they didn't? What if Ukraine still had those nukes today? Well, first off, let's get this out of the way. Russia wouldn't have invaded if Ukraine had nukes because Russia wouldn't want to risk being wiped off the face of the earth. Instead, we'd probably see a lot more diplomacy and maybe even some sort of buffer state between Ukraine and Russia, kind of like what we have with Belarus. But let's pretend that Russia is willing to risk it all. Let's pretend they invade anyway. What happens next? Well, it depends on how much Ukraine loves those nuclear weapons. Remember, these aren't just weapons, they're also a massive financial burden. According to some estimates, it costs Ukraine about $3 billion per year just to maintain their arsenal. So it wouldn't be an easy decision for Ukraine to start launching nukes left and right. It would essentially mean that they have to completely drain their economy just to defend their country. But let's say that Ukrainians are willing to make that sacrifice. What happens then? Well, it would depend on NATO's response. Are they willing to put boots on the ground? Are they willing to risk their own soldiers getting nuked? Or will they just watch as Ukraine gets obliterated? Because remember, Russia has more nukes than just the ones they inherited from the Soviet Union. Russia has been developing their own nukes since the 1940s. They currently have around 1,600 warheads stockpiled, not to mention their tactical nukes that they could deploy anywhere at any given moment. But they would ultimately lose and probably end up getting absorbed into Russia along with Belarus. So why didn't Ukraine keep their nukes? Well, it's because of this treaty called the Budapest Memorandum. In exchange for giving up their nukes, Ukraine promised not to use their territory to threaten or attack any other nation. In other words, they promised not to nuke anyone. This treaty also promised Ukraine's territorial integrity, which basically means that no other nation can invade them and take their land. But as we've seen, that didn't stop Russia. So do you think Ukraine made the right call by giving up their nukes? Or do you think it would have made more sense to keep them just in case? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.